So let's get moving now. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Some news coming in from the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC headquarters in Abuja. The commission has moved on the Rivers State office, and there has been a major overhaul of the staff. The commission today says, based on a report on the administrative panel on the Rivers rerun elections, it is keeping its promise about the overhaul of the commission's office in Rivers State, and it has ordered a redeployment of the administrative secretary, all heads of department, deputy directors and assistant directors, as well as all the 23 electoral officers who head the local government offices and are being redeployed out of Rivers State immediately. Let's say with issues concerning Nigeria's election, let's take a look at the electoral process and the electoral reforms currently undertaken by the Buhari government. The committee headed by Senator Kenny Namani, a former Senate president, is going around the country in its advocacy and gathering of information and opinions of Nigerians on the needed changes in the document. Recently, China's television politics caught up with Senator Kenny Namani, and we wanted to know what will happen to earlier reports on the electoral law.
Yeah, it's part of our terms of reference that we should take a look at that. And I noticed so many people got worried about why is the Namani's Constitutional Electoral Reform Committee? Why is it necessary? What happened to Wiss report and other reports before that? Wiss report is about 8 years old, if you remember. A very nice job they did. But as I've always told people, some other times, nothing is so good that they cannot improve on it.
You had a committee of electoral reforms, and one would be wondering, now that you're moving into the APC, don't you think there's going to be a conflict of interest?
There's no conflict, because you see, you don't prepare an act of that nature for a person or group of persons. You prepare it for all times. Like when I was in National Assembly, I said, you don't make laws for a person. You make it for all times. Because if you make laws for a person, let's suppose that person passes on. It means you have to start all over. And what that implies, it shows either you're a banana republic. You know, you change your constitution as if you are changing minutes of your village meeting. Every time you come, you change it, you write another one. No. So there's no conflict whatsoever.
Senator Kenny Namani, former Senate President, the chairman of the Electoral Committee set up by President Muhammadu Buhari to review the state of the Nigeria. He told us that the times of reference includes looking at the past report, for example, the Justice Waste Committee report, the Lewu Committee report, and all that on the issue of violence after the 2011 elections. But let me introduce you to my guest now, a Nigerian lawyer based in Lagos, Mr. Liberus Oshoma, joins us now on the program. Many thanks for coming on the program.
A pleasure, always.
The question would be, why the need for another committee to look into another committee's report of another committee? And meanwhile, the Senate and the National Assembly are doing perhaps almost the same thing. They're looking at the Constitution and they're also looking at the Electoral Act.
It's funny. Distinguished Senator Ken Namani answered that question. And in answering the question, he contradicted himself. First, he said that that Ways report is 8 years old. And then when you asked him if there won't be conflict of interest, since he had headed the committee in the Senate, he said you don't prepare a document like that for a group of persons. And so what it means is that as Justice Ways' report was not prepared for a group of persons. It was prepared for Nigerians and for all time. And a lot of people, including the party in power today, saw the need for adoption of that report. And so I had expected that as soon as they came on board, that document will be dusted and then we'll find a way of adopting it and not setting up another committee. And like they say of Nigerians, if a Nigerian government sees a snake, they will set up a committee to look into the reasons why the snake came and how to kill it.
And the committee to look at how to kill it.
Exactly.
And the committee to look at how we can make...
And then before you finish all of that, the snake would have disappeared. And so I had expected that with all the conflict that we had, take Section 33 of the Electoral Act, for example, and the Section 141, there had been conflict consistently. Recently, if you remember, the Federal High Court in Akwa Ibom sacked Senator Basi Akpan, that he was not validly nominated in the primaries, and in his place that Senator Basi Etim should take his seat. That's if you're looking at it strictly from Section 33 of the Electoral Act. But also, this also came up in the Amechi and Omeha's case. But the Senate, in trying to, they felt it was a mischief, and also trying to cure that mischief, introduced Section 141, that if you did not participate in the entire processes. And so one would expect the court now to reconcile
because
those two sections.
One of my major concerns, of course, we know that the Justice Ways Committee report preceded, it was a post-2011 election, and one we wonder what has happened between, a lot of people have said, look, the few touches, pre-2011, I beg your pardon, it was the Lewu Committee report that was post-2011. So that there are few things that need to even be fine-tuned. To an extent, I would say maybe there's a committee to tidy it up. But again, my concern basically at that time was Senator Enamani is gone to the APC, and one will wonder if there won't be any clash of interest.
No, really, for me, I don't expect, this is not a job you set up a committee to do. This is a job that the Office of the Attorney General, we're talking about recommendations, laws. You know, this is a job you expect the Office of the Attorney General to tidy up, look into all the documents, and try to harmonize and present before the National Assembly.
There are new developments. The case in Kogi, for example, Audu's case, those are new developments.
You don't need was a committee set up before the National Assembly introduced Section 141 into the Electoral Act. There was no committee. So you don't need a committee to harmonize and reconcile all of this, most especially since you already have committees, you know, report on them.
There are several issues we're looking at on the program. Mr. Oshom, I see here with us, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has said Nigeria needs to kill corruption before corruption kills Nigeria. And it wasn't a surprise when he won the election, and he said corruption fight is at the spine of his administration's role. There is a committee against corruption, yet another committee, you will say, well, another committee headed by Professor Issa Sage, this time around, against corruption, a law luminary, which held a roundtable discussion on the issue of fighting corruption. At the event, the acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, is calling on Nigeria's anti-corruption agencies to look at anti-corruption models that have been successfully used in curbing corruption in other countries of the world and apply same in Nigeria. The acting president would describe corruption as systemic and life-threatening, also appealed to the international community to assist Nigeria in the identification, recovery, and repatriation of stolen funds. Well, let's take a look at what this means for us right now. When we talk about anti-corruption, the president has made it clear that he wants to fight corruption. 2 years down the line, are they close to fighting it, or are they fighting it?
You know, the way corruption is in Nigeria is endemic. We look at political corruption only as corruption in Nigeria, but we forget that, you know, when something is endemic, you know, it means it has deep-rooted, it's deep-rooted in your system, and so you need to completely uproot. It's not something you hang on the wall and say, I just go there and remove it, and then you've removed corruption from the system. And so that's why for us, I think, for some of us, I think we think that it should have been a systemic approach. We've had the FCC, we've had the ICPC, and then you ask yourself the question, why, when we mention anti-corruption, why is it that we don't mention the police? Why is it that? Because prosecution also starts from investigation.
Absolutely.
Why is it that we don't look at you and I? Because corruption actually starts from you and I. It is the little ones that graduate to being appointed to government offices, and then the moment they get there, they see that, oh, government's own is nobody's own, and so it's ready for grab. And so that's why we need also to reform and strengthen our policing system, and then the judiciary system, because here it is easy for us to say the windmill of justice grinds slowly, but we forget that justice delayed is justice denied. And so that's why people consistently have been asking the question, oh, looted funds here, recovered funds here, who has been convicted?
We need to take a moment. And when we return, Mr. Oshoma is still going to be talking to us on more about this issue of corruption in Nigeria and also take up other issues on the Niger Delta tour by the acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. That and more. Join us again.